Hey guys, and welcome back. How's everyone doing? I've been working pretty much non-stop for the past 3 or 4 days on a new system, on a new tool that I want to show you today. It's very early still, it's quite rough in a few places, but it's already showing immense promise. So, let's have a look. I'm gonna load some new objects into the world using a script, and let's see what we got. So we got essentially sort of a gate here in the beginning. We got a jump, and we got something to jump through, and then we got an end gate. So let's see if we can make this. We'll drive through the gate, and I'm gonna pause the game. So what happened? Well, first of all, we have a new message here in the middle of the screen. Mission started, and then a sort of a path here, which I'll explain in a little bit. We also got an objective screen up here in the top right corner. Gather some speed and make the jump. Okay, so let's try to do that. I'm gathering some speed, and hopefully I can jump through this hole, which I did. Let's pause the game again. And the objective changes to nice. Now reach the end. Okay, let's unpause the game and try to drive through this end gate. And when I do, we get mission completed. And we get the same path again. Alright, so that in itself doesn't necessarily look super exciting. And indeed it actually isn't. But the cool thing comes from the fact that this is created all using a new tool I created, called Nemo. So let me show you Nemo. Why Nemo, you ask? Well, I basically just needed a name for this, and Nemo came to mind. So it's named after the sea captain, not the fish. And what is Nemo? So Nemo is sort of like a database and an object and information management system for the game, for means and for bases. But it can essentially be used with any sort of game that you want to create. If you've used the very popular, or at least relatively popular tool called RTC Draft, then you sort of know what Nemo is about. This is essentially my own personal version of RTC Draft, completely self-created, but with some differences as well. So what do we have? Well, first of all, we have the mission that we just looked at. We can click this and we get a nice flow for the mission. I'm going to zoom in here and we can see what actually just happened. So we started the mission. Here's a little bit of a delay. I'm gonna talk a lot about delays when it comes to these kinds of visual mission sequences. We got a little bit of guidance, gather some speed, and make the jump. This is the text that you saw in the top right corner. Then we wait for a condition. So a condition which is read from this global variable with this path has made jump. When we have made the jump, we get the second guidance text. Nice, now reach the end, at which point we do the same thing but with another global variable, has reached end, and then the mission completes. So you can see that essentially the whole flow for the entire mission is laid out like this. It's not enough to represent the whole mission like this. For example, we're not actually writing to these two variables here, we're only reading them. But the whole overall structure of what this mission is about can be seen here. Start the mission, we get some guidance, we wait for something, we get some more guidance, again we wait for something, and then the mission is completed. So this is one thing that you can do with Nemo. You can create missions. They're called missions in the Nemo terminology, but this can be essentially anything. You don't have to show the mission started and mission completed messages. You don't need to do this kind of guidance stuff. You can essentially script whatever you want with this sort of system. But it's mostly sort of meant for creating missions and sequences in the game that you need, or the player needs, to carry out to progress in the story. So next to this mission, we have something called a global variable set. And again, the UI is quite rough. So this is a first version, essentially. But we have two global variables here. You can add more if you want to. Float, ints, bools, and strings. And these are both of type bool. So has made jump and has reached end. Their initial value is both set to false, not propagated. You can propagate these over the network if you want to, but the logic is executed on the server, so we don't need to do that. And you can create a description here, like hello. It's just for the designer, essentially, the user of this tool, so you can make some notes about what this variable is used for. Again, this works sort of like RTC in the sense that we have these global variable sets, and you have all the sort of related variables in here grouped together like this. So you can read global variables, and if we just delete this shows all of the variables that we have. This will only show the Boolean variables, because this is a node that reads Boolean variables. And you might be wondering, all right, this is cool, but where do we actually write to these variables? Because they're both set to be false initially, and somehow this wait for condition actually continues. So something must be setting this to true. And that is true. Pun not intended. So I have a layer here, and this is the layer that I loaded in using the script in the beginning. It has all of these objects here that you saw got brought into the world. We also have three triggers. So here's the trigger, the start trigger, and it shows this volume here, which when something enters this, we get this onObjectEntered script event, which is fired. And what this does is, first of all, note that it doesn't actually check which object enters this. So this is a little bit of a fudged mission script, in the sense that you could just throw like a football through this and it will start the mission. But ideally we would check that it is essentially the player's vehicle that enters it. Anyway, I digress. When something enters, we send a message, and we send that message to level objects test mission script, and the message is just start. So this is the receiver of that message. And this object is of type gameplay/Nemo script. It might be a little difficult to see, but it says gameplay/Nemo script. And here, if we click info on this, you can see here, this one we can actually make bigger. We can see that the script is of type means Nemo script component. And a Nemo script component is essentially a script component which has access to the Nemo system, meaning it can start missions, it can read and write global variables, and that's about it for now. I mean, still early days. I will definitely expose more of the Nemo API to AngelScript later down the line. But for now, you can start missions and you can read and write the global variables. And essentially, if we just delete these other methods here that aren't doing anything, you have the whole rest of the mission logic. Essentially, everything that's part of the mission but is not in here. That logic is in this one function here. So this start trigger sends start to the script when something enters it. The jump trigger sends jump, and the jump trigger is, unsurprisingly, a trigger that sits inside of this frame here. And the end one sends the end message. And now you can see that this is where we're actually writing. So we have self.writeBool. We need to tell it the path to the global variable set that we want to write, and then the name of the variable that we want to write. and finally the value. And this is where we get to these paths. So var set dev missions, test missions, global variable set. I'm sure you're smart enough to realize that it's actually built up from this path. So dev missions, test mission, global variable set. And here you can see the path as well. And you can right click and copy the path, and you can get it here on the bottom. The mission has the same thing, except it's prefixed with mission instead. Dev missions, test mission, and mission. And if we go back here to the script, you can see that when we receive the start message, that is the mission that we start. Start mission, and then the path. And this whole Nemo script system is a little gnarly in the sense, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that we have so many strings here that can get sort of out of date, and if someone renames this mission in the tool, for example, this string is obviously still here. So I'd like to make this a little nicer so that you actually get auto-completed paths and variable names, these guys. So that if someone renames something, you get a script build failure here rather than a runtime error. But again, it's early days, so this is how it works for now. All right, so we're starting the mission. We're setting the first global variable, the has made jump, to true. So that brings us essentially this far to this node here. Then we wait for another condition, has reached end. And it gets a little trickier here, just a little. So if the player enters here but then just drives around this jump here and then enters the end, we don't want to actually set reach the end here because they haven't jumped through this frame in the air. So when we get this end message sent by this trigger here, we check if it has made the jump, and only if it has, then we write reach to end. Otherwise we get into a weird state where we drive past the jump and into the end gate, and then we go back and then we make the jump. In that case, this mission would sort of wait for the whole thing here in the condition, wait for condition node here, but then it would progress all the way through to the end immediately when this is set to true. So we don't want to do that. So there's a little bit of state management here in this script, and arguably this could perhaps be solved some other way with some more intelligent sort of rule system where you can only set certain global variables if some other if some other conditions are met. But currently we handle it like this. So the whole mission is essentially sort of contained in this one mission, in this one function, and then in this graph here. So that's essentially like the meat of Nemo. We have some other things as well here. We have characters, and again you can see that this UI is very, 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 very rough currently. These characters are characters in the sense that they are essentially like people in the world of the game. And you can just create more here if you want to, another character. And this hierarchy here is completely up to you how you want to actually organize your things. So for example, I prefer to have like a global variable set next to a mission, which then uses those global variables, so they're sort of together nicely and in an organized fashion. Because these global variables are, as their name suggests, they are global. Any mission can write to any global variable, etc., etc. And that is by design, because then you can have missions that affect other missions, etc., etc. So yes, you can organize your database essentially however you want. Cool. That is it for this time. In the next video, I think we'll look at actually implementing a slightly more interesting mission using Nemo. Now that you know what the system is about, in the next mission, we'll take what we know and we'll put together a small mission which is still simple, but perhaps a little more interesting than this thing here. And that'll be a lot of fun. So that's it for today. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions or anything, write them below. Remember to like and subscribe and do all of the YouTube things. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.